Oh, good morning, everyone. I'm Nick. I'm from TownClose School in Norwich, and we were invited, like I guess many of you were, via email to perhaps trial some of these materials, and we definitely wanted to do so because at that time we had a couple of aims at our school, particularly in science, but generally as a whole school as well, which was to get more visitors into the school, to get more trips going. And so this came right at a good time for us. So we wanted to get scientists in or visitors in after the pandemic. We wanted to get trips going. But also we found that everything was a little sterile after the pandemic. We wanted to re-engage our parents because a lot of our parents at our schools, luckily for us, are very, very engaged. And so this was a really useful project. And something that I felt that we hadn't looked into too much was science capital. And so I wanted to try and do this project to raise their capital. Only a year ago did I discover this term. So if you don't know science capital, I'll briefly explain it because I didn't until about a year ago. It's just the word that we give to a student's attitude to science, their knowledge to science, their understanding and relevance to it in their society, in their lives. And I just thought we really do need to promote that. So this project hit all of the goals. We thought, perfect. So the idea is that they have to rewild Britain. They have to bring back an extinct animal back into the UK countryside. There are 4 contestants, as you can see, and the initial activity, we brought in a scientist via webinar into the class, which gave it real kudos. The children loved that. And the project was explained, and they were told to choose one animal, but not obviously by random chance. They had to look through some materials. So this is on our VLE, and their homework was to go and talk with their family about each and every one of these animals and decide on the brief evidence that we gave them. So we gave them a couple of PowerPoints, one for each animal. This is all on just a screenshot from our VLE. And at the end, they had to discuss with their parents, their children, their siblings, well, what should we go for? And they had to vote at the end of the session, and this is what we got. Now, unfortunately, the bear should be the loser, but it won. It was a trial project, of course. So the wolf and the lynx were the ones that we went with at most. Some of them went for bison. I'll explain why in a moment. But generally, we were saying, well, the wolf or the lynx, initially, looking at the information you provided with, looks great. So we then said, well, how do we decide? So we looked at a real-life example, the beaver in the UK, and we then looked at claims and whether or not there's enough evidence for a claim. And our claim, of course, here was the lynx should be reintroduced, or the wolf should be reintroduced, the bison should be reintroduced. So what evidence is there to actually show that that is the case? And we modelled how to action that through a real-life sort of more relevant idea to them, which is the band TBS. So we went through what has happened in terms of the beaver in the UK, and we looked at people's opinions, and we found out that not everybody was happy, but we also said that, well, actually, it's not about people's opinions. What does the evidence show? So they were then presented with lots of evidence as such. But what do they do with that evidence? So then we went back a step and we said, well, what you've got to do is look at how that evidence supports the claim that the beaver should stay. How do we do that? So it was the TBS Act. Now, I don't know about you, but I didn't know who TBS were. They are a sort of a play on a very famous pop band. I think they're from South Korea. Anyway, the children knew, I didn't, and they thought it was great. They thought it was great that we were talking about this made-up band, which had lots of parallels with a real band. But the claim was that they were the most successful music act of last year. So how do we know if this is a true claim or not? So they were presented with some pieces of evidence, and they firstly had to decide, well, is this evidence actually relevant to that claim, or is it just irrelevant? And that was our first discussion. And we came back with one of those pieces was irrelevant, 3 were relevant. But then we had to say, well, now we know if this evidence is relevant, does it actually support or oppose the claim? So again, we were talking about that in their group work, and we discovered that actually 2 of them were supported. 1 of them wasn't supportive of the claim. And eventually in that lesson, we decided that there was enough evidence to suggest that the claim was supported. So we taught them and modelled them how to do this. Now let's reapply it to their animal. So they then decided, okay, are we going to go for the bison? Are we going to go for the wolf or the lynx? And they were presented with this information. So they had to come up with 3 claims, at least. Firstly, that their animal can survive. Secondly, that their animal is supported. People want that animal back in the wild. And another one is it has a positive effect on the food web, which obviously helps with the teaching of that concept. The children decided what they wanted to go for, and they were then presented with additional information for that chosen animal. For example, this is the wolf evidence sheet. So they would have their claims and they would look through this. They were provided with some video links and other resources as well. They could do their own research. And they then decided how strong their claims were based on this evidence. Again, applying that skill that we hopefully, and I think we did, help them to understand through the real-life example. And the end project was to then produce a poster of their animal. So we got some really lovely work, I felt, and every group from a weak ability to a very strong ability was able to produce some really good scientific claims and evidence for that claim. I think lynx was probably the most popular animal that was chosen, and then some of them tactically decided to choose bison so that their work could be presented on the science board, because they realised, oh, hang on, everybody's doing lynx and wolf, we can only have a few on the board, so I'm going to do bison. So they did it purely for that reason only, I think. And yeah, and this was the end result on our board. But we had probably about 15 posters in the end, and it was real tough to choose who would have it. So it's a really engaging, fun activity. The children really enjoyed it. They did have a complaint, though, which I was really surprised about. They genuinely thought that their decision was going to happen. And when they realised that this wasn't happening, they were quite upset, some of them. They said, so do you mean that we're not having the lynx rewilded then? We've just done all of this work and it's for nothing. They actually, some of them had that attitude. I was quite surprised. Well, no, it's just an example of how you can work if you choose to do this in your later life. This is what people do when they leave school. You may choose to do this, and I had to try and talk them out of it. But most of them really loved it and knew that it wasn't going to happen. So it was really rewarding, and they had great fun, and so did I. Thank you very much. Yeah, well, we decided that the bear would be too dangerous, really, and that's what we told the children. We said, well, because Britain is quite close, their communities, their cities are quite close to the countryside, we could have encroachment, and it may not be a good idea to have bears in the wild. That's what we said. So these were year 8s. We're a small school. We only have 35 in the year group. Ranging from all abilities, from very low to extremely high. These ones were from our top and middle group. Well, I only assessed them on their food web knowledge, actually, not the skill. So we did some testing on food webs, and they did really well. I must admit, we didn't test them on their use of evidence against hypotheses and claims and things like that after this. Yeah, I was worried about where this would all fit in, because at our school, we're a prep school, so year 8 are our top year group, and they have to sit exams at the end of year 8, common entrance exams. And I was worried about the time factor. But then I thought, why should I be worried? This is a great way of teaching food webs. So it simply took my food webs place in the scheme of work. So we did this instead of teaching food webs, and they still picked up the knowledge in exactly the same way. We did teach food webs for about 45 minutes in one of the lessons, so we could apply the knowledge to this. But this spanned approximately 6 lessons, so it's quite a big chunk of lessons. But I felt it was valuable time used. Absolutely. In fact, they did do a little bit of that. There was a sheet that alongside this where they could look at each other's work and decide if the claim has been supported, if there's enough evidence in their work to support that claim. So we did do a little bit of that as well, yes. In this instance, we didn't, but I don't think that would be a bad idea at all. Yeah, I must admit, we didn't give success criteria to this. We just gave this initial sheet saying that you need to make sure that you've included this to have a good poster, but there's no actual success criteria as such. That could be an improvement for sure. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm the person to ask here, but absolutely it is, because yeah, we were just trialing the materials and they're all open source, so anyone can use this. And it wasn't just a rewilding one. I understand there were a couple, but I just chose rewilding. I think that's a really good idea, a collapsed curriculum day. I think you could really do some great stuff with that. You could definitely get this done in a day. You could definitely deliver the materials and get the posters done in a day. And yeah, that would be a nice collaboration, wouldn't it? It's a good idea. Would I build my curriculum on all of this model? But yes, this is pretty much how I choose to deliver the curriculum.
Thank you very much, Nick.
Thank you.